Hey Agile friends, welcome to a special series of episodes where we explore product development of a real-life application that enables remote pairing. In this first-person account of product development and remote work stories, we talk about Tuple, a remote pair programming app for macOS and Windows designed to make you feel like you're collaborating in person. If you want to know more, check out Tuple.app/Scrum. That's Tuple.app/Scrum. And let them know you heard about them here on the podcast. For me, what's cool about these stories is how they took the user's needs to heart and put on loads of developer-specific touches you just don't see with generic screen sharing tools. Tuple has been adopted by some very large companies and public sector, more on that in the episodes this week, that work even partially remote, partially or fully, of course. So check out the app at Tuple.app/Scrum and get their 50% off for the first 3 months of your subscription. That's 50% off for the first 3 months of your subscription. Let them know that you heard about Tuple here on the podcast by going to Tuple.app/Scrum. One more time, Tuple.app/Scrum. And now, on to the episode. Hello everybody, welcome to our TGIF episode. Today's Friday and we have with us the head of product of Tuple.app, Eli Goodman. Hey Eli, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So for those of you who don't know, Eli, maybe you haven't heard the previous episodes this week. He's the head of product of Tuple.app, which is an application and a service to help people who want to have an amazing experience while pairing with their remote colleagues. And for example, yesterday we talked about how Eli himself, as the head of product, is also pairing on a regular basis. Check that out, especially if you're interested in what success means for product managers. Right, Eli, but now back to you. For your role specifically as head of product, one of the key challenges, of course, is to keep the whole team aligned. And in your case, it's the whole company, literally, on the future of the product, from CEO to support functions, the daily development of the product. How do you make sure you keep the vision coherent, over the long term, and make sure that the team is aligned with that vision, even though they're doing all kinds of things every single day?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's really tough in a remote environment. I'll state up front that's a hard reality of it. But I think there are three things that I would throw out there as tools that have been really helpful for me to create sort of continuous alignment with the organization, especially towards a more ambitious vision. So this is a piece of advice that I got from a mentor early on in my journey as a product person. But it was the use of, you might call it like an emotional picture or a story. So this can feel a little bit counterintuitive, especially if you're working on something that's a little bit more utilitarian, and Tuple certainly is, right? It's not like a movie or a game or a song. Like, it's not a piece of art. It's a gray and white piece of software that runs in your computer. But I think that just as a tool for building alignment, using more poetic words, using some aesthetic imagery, can really help everyone understand how it's supposed to feel to use it. And I think some of the best products do evoke something in us, right? Like right now I'm looking at my Kindle, which is a pretty utilitarian piece of gear, but the feeling I get when I use it is that I have unlimited books at my fingertips. That's a human superpower, to be able to access your whole library and bring it around with you, right? So again, not a super artsy thing that's getting built, but it really does carry that aesthetic energy. I think using those, you also might call them a somatic metaphor. How does it feel in your body? Using some of those somatic metaphors, using some more poetic language, allowing yourself to get a little bit loosey-gooseier with stuff. I've actually found that works really nicely because it both informs what features should we build, and from an aesthetic perspective, what should the iconography be, what should get the most precedence in the design, and also it allows me to sanity check something with our customers, right? Is this a feeling that's interesting to them? I think there is some subtlety and some tactical techniques you can use to see if your emotional vision resonates with a world that they want to be in, which is a little bit outside the scope of this conversation. But it is also useful to have that in my head when I enter a customer conversation, so I can understand if the picture I'm trying to paint is a picture that they want to see painted. So that's like one tool that I've got in my toolbox. The second one is a little bit more tactical, and this is the use of unstructured space, right? So one thing I'm really cognizant of is working remotely. When I think about the calendar of the average engineer that works at Tuple, without any conscious intervention, we have stand-ups, right? Which are relatively structured, actually. Everyone gives their updates, and we create parking lot items where people can have focused conversations about blockers or particular items. But without doing anything different, we really wouldn't have a lot of opportunities for us to all be in the same space without an agenda, right? And so I know this is very much part of the Agile orthodoxy, but it's sort of, I have not seen I've been on teams where this was not as respected, the process of using retrospectives as a real open space where free-flowing communication can happen, right? And the reason why I think this benefits continuous alignment is there is an aspect of keeping the team aligned, which is me painting pictures, right? Of me communicating from the top down where I think we should go and what I think we should do. But there's a feedback loop. It's not always what I think is right, and that's what everybody else should do. So much of how both the language I use to describe where we're going and the idea itself has come from the team, right? So when I create unstructured space where the team can sort of be together, and retrospectives are what we call them, but it's sort of like an hour and a half on the calendar where there's a light structure and a little bit of motivation to talk. But for the most part, it's a chance for everyone on the team to have their voice heard and to have me and the other leaders respond in kind. You can feel it afterwards that everyone gets energized about where we're going. Everyone feels like they're on the same page. And it's not like I'm trying to force them to do it. Do you know what I mean? There's something magical that happens in unstructured space. So this is, again, a tool that I really value on a remote
Do you
team.
have some tips regarding specifically this aspect of using the retrospectives as unstructured space to align the team?
Yeah, for sure. So this is a practice I picked up a few jobs ago. And again, I don't know if this derives from somewhere else, but two things that I really like about the way we do retrospectives. One is the tool we use. So we use FigJam, and I think there's a bunch of tools that are similar, which is like a whiteboarding tool, right? It's so subtle, but the difference between using a whiteboarding style tool where things can be moved in space, and FigJam itself is a very lighthearted feel for anyone who knows it. It's very playful. It feels so different than using like Notion or Google Docs, like a linear text document. You know it when you feel it, but it really does create a space where literally a space where more things can happen. So we use FigJam. And we use 3 motivating questions. So it's really filling in the gaps of 3 sentence starters. One is I liked, one is I wish, and one is props to, right? And so each person gets a few minutes to say, I liked this, I liked that, I liked this. Say props to so-and-so, props to so-and-so, props to so-and-so. And the last is I wish, I wish, I wish. And to me, what's really nice about this is 2/3 of it is positive. It creates this foundation of positive energy. I liked what we've done around shipping things, around moving numbers, around getting stuff done. Props is gratitude towards your coworkers is magic. As I could talk for a long time about that, how it's something that I can't do it enough almost. It's great to feel the gratitude of your coworkers, be able to give it in kind. And then I wish often turns up the things that need to be talked about, the places where it feels like we're falling short as a product, the places where things feel out of alignment, things feel confusing. This also feels like a really random detail, but I always give everybody a chance to speak their stickies aloud. They put them in the FigJam and we have a little structure for it. But like I said, I want everyone's voice to be heard, and I don't really hem people in. I let people kind of ramble a little bit because we carve out a lot of time for this. And so even if it would be possible for us to visually just scan each sticky note, I like to give each person the mic and they can talk through each thing. And then we sort of have an unstructured time at the end for us to go through themes. And so that's our retrospective protocol, but it's been really helpful for building alignment.
I really love it. Also, because of what you said, 2/3 is focusing on positives. And the last third, I wish it's also implicitly positive, right? Because you're talking about something you hope for, you wish for, right?
Yeah.
And I just interviewed someone recently. The interview is only going to come out in October, but I interviewed them recently and they were talking about this concept of feed forward, right? So instead of feedback, feed forward, right? And this I wish is an example of that. You're you're projecting your hope into the future, right? And I think that's also, it will bring up tough topics eventually, of course, but it's also inherently a positive outlook for what can be better or what can be new and exciting.
I think it's very well said. I love that. And I feel that energy too. And it feels like folks are engaged. They want things to be better and you're wishing for a better future. The last thing that I have seen be really effective in terms of building alignment, and there's some, I think, tactical tips in here too, is to many folks use either Slack or Teams as sort of like a group chat kind of situation. And I have been making Slack posts, right? So I think about using Slack as like a place to write up a coherent thought and post it. And I think this is an interesting thing that I'm seeing out there in the world as well as a practice of making not just threads about something, but I, as the head of product, am posting. So one is another product I want to shout out that we're not using, but we're really considering, and it's called Campsite. And Campsite is a product that's like Slack, but they have posts as a first-class citizen. That's how it works. And again, I'm not being paid by Campsite. Just noticed that it was interesting. And they've done a lot of thinking and writing about the fact that this is they are really optimistic about this as a way to work. And I found this as well, especially if I have a really great customer conversation, I have an idea in the shower, I have, I'm noticing something that feels inconsistent in our product. It feels really good for me to get my thoughts together and make a post about it in the world. Seems minor, but I've gotten a lot of value out of this. Another thing that I also want to shout out is we talked to a customer recently, and the way they use Slack is each person has two channels that are associated with their name. One is what they call a notebook, and one is called a feed, right? And what's cool about this is you can subscribe to any of your colleagues' notebooks or feeds. And for feeds, they'll often put like, oh, look at this interesting link. Look at this paper. Look at this cool other product. Look at this thing. Look at this design. Little tiny bits, right? Almost like a Twitter feed. And each person will also have a notebook where they'll make posts. And this is a lot of how inter-team communication happens. People posting in their notebook. I'd never heard of this before, but I was really inspired about it. And so we haven't done this yet, but I'm thinking about it, and we're thinking about Campsite and really trying to double down on this idea of us posting as opposed to just starting a thread about something or putting out more questions. It's really about proactively writing up a thought about something and being deliberate about putting that into the team space to let it marinate and to get feedback.
And also because it brings the narrative part in, right? It's not just a very short title for a feature, but there's a narrative behind. And I really like that. I'm curious how that will go. So when you're done with that experiment and you have some feedback to share, do come back on the podcast and share with us that I think some people might call it also working out loud or asynchronous working. And of course, there's the memo culture that Amazon introduced, or some people say Amazon introduced. I don't know if they did really introduce, but they used it at least. Like, I think that there's a little bit of that, us as an industry, right? Like software and product development, discovering better ways to create, in this case, alignment, but also to share information that then becomes relevant to create more sense of alignment being one, but also understanding for each other, right? And I think that posts might be a great way to get there.
Yeah, no, I'm really optimistic about it. And if we do it, I would love to talk about it because I'm bullish on it, and we'll see how it pays off.
Absolutely. You have to do your reality touch point now.
Exactly right.
For those of you who don't know, check out yesterday's episode. So Eli, Eli's the head of product at Tuple.app. Check it out if you need a remote pairing app. Of course, catering for developers who need this perfect, pixel perfect and no latency experience like Tuple does. But I'm sure many people who don't program anymore, like Eli himself, can definitely benefit from it. So check it out at Tuple.app, and we'll put the link in the show notes, of course, for you to check it out. But Eli, about yourself, where can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So again, Tuple's the spot. I sort of don't have an internet presence. This is by design. I'm a pretty offline person. But if you would like to connect with me, I love email. That's kind of my favorite mode of communication. So you can email me at Eli@Tuple.app. I'll hang out with you. I'll talk with you. We'll schedule time. I'm always hungry to have conversations, but I'm not really on Twitter or anything like that. So I'm sorry for everyone out there. Just not my thing.
And everybody does email anyway, right? So we'll put
Yeah.
Eli's email on the show notes, so check those out as well. Eli, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge.
No, the pleasure's all mine, Vesca. Thank you.
Hey there. We hope you loved the episode. And before you go, don't forget to thank the folks at Tuple.app for being so generous with their stories and for their support for the podcast. So visit their website at Tuple.app/Scrum. Get their discount, and why not share them with your colleagues if you find that the app is useful. And remember, sharing is caring.